And welcome to the Planning Committee of the 7th of February. Apologies for absence. I've received no apologies. Have you, Ed?
No apologies received, Chair.
No. Okay, lovely, thank you. Any declarations of interest?
I'm going to be leaving after the second item because of the redetermination of the third.
Okay, thank you. Any more? No? Thank you. Minutes of previous meetings. I've got the minutes here for the meetings of the 7th of June, the 4th of October and the 10th of January. Are you all happy that I can sign those as a true and accurate record? Yeah. Just got to remember it's 24, haven't I? Thank you. Chair's announcements. The only announcement I have is that if there is a fire bell go off, then the officers will direct us to the appropriate place where we can gather to make sure we're all safe. It's generally by the V&B brewery across the road. So that's that. I think we're ready to go all the items in the right order tonight. I'm just going to read out the public speakers that I have, just in case we have missed anybody. We've got Jack Chamberlain, Simon Steele, Colin Newton, Councillor David Smith, Councillor Joe Guilford, Roy Hammond, Stephen Dabbs and Rachel Clare. Have I missed anybody? Good. Okay. And just finally, it's Sean's last meeting tonight, so I wish him all the best in the future. And thank you for all your help and support. Okay then, right, application determined, item 5, 5A. Jonathan, this is yours, I believe, to present to us.
Thank you, Chair. First application is for the demolition of the existing care home, construction of 18 affordable dwellings at Egton Brook Care Home, Egton Brook Road, Northampton. I would draw members' attention to the addendum in front of them, which proposes some changes to the 3 of the conditions. So I'll give you a few seconds to read that, just so you're familiar with the proposed changes to the report and to some of the conditions contained within. If we can move on to the next slide. So the first slide in front of you shows the site location plan. Site is located, just back a slide please, site location plan with the surrounding residential area. To the east is the Egton Brook Road, the main access road through Egton Brook, the Egton Brook former public house to the northeast of the site, and former community centre to the north. Next slide please. The plan shows the existing site plan, the car park on the eastern side, outside the red line, which serves existing neighbourhood parade, which includes a pharmacy, doctor's surgery, and other local uses. Next slide please. This shows the layout of the proposed site. 18 dwellings proposed in terraced formation, 4 blocks with 37 car parking spaces in the eastern side to serve the dwellings being proposed. The proposal is for 100% affordable housing, giving a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom properties. Next slide please. The slide in front of you shows the design of the properties and the floor layouts. The proposal includes 2-story properties with solar panels on the roofs. The materials would be brick and render. The following 2 slides also shows, similar to that, the design of the properties again, with the 2-story terrace dwellings proposed and the floor layouts below. Next slide please. And again. This basically shows the cycle parking being proposed as part of the development. It's hard to make out because it's quite faint, but it does show the proposed cycle parking storage. Next slide, please. These are the photographs that have been taken on site recently. The slide on the left shows the car park adjacent to the site, which serves the local facilities nearby. The slide on the right-hand side shows some of the remaining residential properties around the site. Next slide, please. Again, the care home's on the left-hand side. It's been vacant for approximately 6-7 years. It's previously developed land. brownfield site. And again, the properties in the slides on the right-hand side show the surrounding residential area. The application is recommended for approval tonight. It's not a conservation area. It's bringing a vacant building back into use again, albeit it's been demolished. No objections received from highways, no objections from environmental health or police. There's been no objections from any neighbouring properties. An application has been recommended for approval. Significant contribution to the council's 5-year housing land supply, and is providing affordable rented accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Does the committee have any questions for Jonathan? Councillor Cribbin?
Thank you, Chair. I was just interested and quite pleased to note that they've got solar panels on some of these properties. Now, I've asked in the past, can we put conditions in? And there is a condition on here to put solar panels on, and I'm just wondering why we've done it this time and we haven't done it in the past. Has anything changed in law or anything like that that means that we can now put this on and for future applications, whether we should be thinking about that on all our houses?
Good question.
Because I know the EV points are covered by building regulations now, it says. Obviously, solar panels aren't. And what's changed? Because I'm really happy that it has. But I know that not every single property has them, though. That's the second question. Why?
I'll try my best, Councillor. There's nothing in policy to require solar panels to be provided. However, in this instance, the applicant provided them on the plans. As you've correctly identified, we are enforcing a condition that further details of the design report for solar panels be provided. Some cases come forward where solar panels are provided. Some cases are where they're not. There's nothing in policy to ensure that they are provided, but in this case, the applicant did choose to promote sustainable development as part of the development.
Any further questions to Jonathan? Catherine?
Thank you. I see that one lot of properties is council housing. Does that mean that NPH is involved here?
NPH is the applicant in this case.
Oh, sorry. Okay, no further questions. Any comments? Jonathan?
Jane? Obviously, this is in my ward and I'm very familiar with the site. Just so members are aware, we're also looking to maybe, as part of this development, further development, maybe a community centre, which we're working towards getting as part of the development as well. So that may be a separate application, hopefully, in the future at some point. But personally, I'm delighted to see this application here today. The site has obviously been derelict for some time, which brings all the issues that a derelict building has, and we're going to have much needed affordable housing in my area, which is desperately needed. So I'd be very happy to propose offer the recommendations. Thank you.
Cecile's going to second it. So we've got a proposer and a seconder to approve the officer's recommendation to accept all those in favour. That is unanimous tonight. So that's good. That's everybody. Good. Okay, so that application has been approved. So 5A has been approved. Okay, so we're going to move on now to 5B. And Oliver, this is yours, so we'll just wait while we swap seats. Okay, Oliver, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So, good evening. This presentation will largely summarise the contents of the officer's report with regard to the proposed development of the Beaver Centre in Woodford House. Next slide, please. The application site comprises part of an existing industrial estate known as the Beaver Centre, located in Woodford House. The estate comprises of 14 units arranged over 2 linear blocks, shown on the slide. Each unit has parking at the front for 3 vehicles, with 2 formal spaces and 1 informal space. Development is proposed adjacent to the existing units along the southern block and on an area used for overflow parking. The Beaver Centre is located in the northernmost part of Woodford House. It is surrounded by further industrial uses to the north, Great Central Way to the east, Byfield Road to the south, and a residential estate to the west. The proposed development is for the construction of 2 additional industrial units for B2 use. Their appearance and size will match the existing units on site, and they will benefit from car parking to the front of the units with 2 formal spaces and 1 informal space. Access would remain through the existing estate off Great Central Way. Next slide, please. Next, and this shows the proposed floor plans and elevations of the units. As you can see, they match the existing units on site. Next slide, please. So the existing alignment of the southern boundary fence is proposed to be removed to facilitate the units, with a replacement height 1.8 metre high closeboard fence proposed along part of the southern boundary. The development would require a limited reduction of the root protection area and minor works to the trees to the south of these units, and they're shown, as you can see, to the south of the units on the plan. Next slide, please. So these photos show the entrance to Great Central Way and the entrance to the Beaver Centre. The key issues arising from the application include principle of development, highway safety, access and parking, design and impact on the character and appearance of the area, and the impact on neighbouring amenity. The proposed units of B2 use within a designated strategic employment area and therefore fall within the use classes supported by the policies within the development plan. They are of an appropriate scale and located within the village confines, would not result in the loss of any employment use or land. The proposal would also provide an employment generating use. Therefore, the principle of development is supported in this case. A condition has also been included to ensure that the proposed units are for B2 use only. With regard to access, the local highway authority has no objection, highlighting that the access leading off Great Central Way is deemed acceptable. Moreover, they have concluded that the traffic impact of the development is negligible and further assessment is not required. Next slide, please. So these two photos show the existing overflow parking area. With regard to parking, the new units will provide space that meets the minimum adopted standards, and assessing the Beaver Centre as a whole, the parking exceeds this standard. It is not considered that in planning terms the loss of the overflow parking would impact the operation of the existing businesses, and on balance, the loss of this area, the overflow parking, would not harm the parking of the wider industrial estate. Next slide, please. These show the elevations of the existing units. The design of the units would match the appearance, height and scale of the existing units and will result in the southern block mirroring the form of the northern block. Next slide, please. The proposed units would also have minimal impact on the character of the surrounding area and the appearance of the street scene. The group of trees to the south of the site, which are shown on the photos to the left, would be retained with minimal impact on the root protection area, along with limited crown lifting and tree pruning required. These minor works would not compromise the long-term health of the trees. Next slide, please. And these photos show the views from the adjacent residential estate. With regard to neighbouring amenity, there are no new openings proposed on the western elevation that faces the adjacent residential estate shown. Moreover, the existing boundary hedge would be retained, which is considered to provide sufficient screening of the new units. A sufficient distance from the new units to the residential use to the west would be retained, and the additional units are unlikely to have a material impact on noise or disruption. To further safeguard residential amenities and to reduce pollution, working hours during the works have been conditioned, along with any future external plant or flues requiring the written permission of the local planning authority. It is concluded that the new units would not result in harm to neighbouring residential use, nor would they impact the amenity of the existing units. It is concluded that development is sympathetically designed, does not undermine the character of the local area, does not result in an unacceptable impact on the highway safety or parking, and has no harm to neighbouring amenity. As such, it is acceptable in planning terms and should be approved. It is noted that informatives to cover the construction process, electric vehicle charging points, and the works proposed to the trees are also recommended to be added to the decision notice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. Any questions from the committee to Oliver? Councillor Frost.
Yes, thank you. It's working. Lots of flashing. Oh.
Can we try this?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for that summary. So the predecessor of this is planning application DA 2019-0797 for 4 industrial units, and a condition was placed upon that application, condition number 8, which involved requiring an assessment to happen, the assessment of the impact of the first 4 before giving permission. It says in the reasoning, this condition is imposed to give the LPA the opportunity of assessing the impact of any potential change of use. The parish council are concerned that the extent to which that assessment happened, and they've asked through a Freedom of Information request for a copy of it. they've asked repeatedly, starting about 6 months ago, and trying to choose my words carefully, they haven't seen it, and therefore they have no evidence that it exists, and therefore there's a degree of puzzlement that the first 4 were allowed to be built before we assess the impact. Are you familiar with that request? Was an assessment carried out, and if so, what's preventing the issuance of it?
So is that relating to, can you just repeat the application reference number again?
It's DA 2019 2019 0797. I've got a copy of the Planning Commission document that was issued on 26th of September.
So it was, obviously they were in the comments from the Parish Council and have had regard to those in the report. These were separate applications, not on this application site, so we're seen not to be material to determining this application.
But one is an extension of the other. You can't claim they're different, can you?
Through you, Chair, if I may. If the red line is different, then yes, you can. It's 2 separate entities. As Oliver's already said, that this application site, that application reference number related to a different site to this one.
In section 4 of the report, that reference number isn't listed, so therefore it can't be in this application.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions to Ella? Okay, then. We have one public speaker on this, so I'll call on Jack Chamberlain to come to the table. Just to let you know, you have 3 minutes to speak. Speak to me, ignore everybody else in the room, okay? Below the TV screen there, you've got a green light, an amber light and a red light. Around about 2.5 minutes, the amber light will come on and then the red light will come on after 3 minutes. And I'll ask you to stop speaking then. Remain seated because I'll ask the committee if they've got any questions for you, okay? But just before we start, can you tell me who you are and who you represent?
Do I need to tell you something?
Yes, please, yeah.
So my name's Jack Chamberlain, I'm a planning consultant and I'm here on behalf of the applicant Charlton Haynes Limited.
Okay, so your 3 minutes start now.
Dear Chairman and members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you this evening on the planning application at the Beaver Centre. I am the planning agent for the application representing Charlton Haynes Limited. Firstly, I must commend the planning officer's report. It is thorough, properly balanced and reflects the careful and detailed consideration of the application that has taken place. I will therefore keep my comments brief. There are no objections to our planning application from statutory technical consultees in terms of traffic, parking, health and landscape. I note that within their consultation response, and has been discussed here, the Parish Council make reference to 2 separate planning permissions from 2019 and 1993, which relate to an industrial development north of both the Beaver Centre and the wider Great Central Way industrial estate. As stated by the planning officer in his report, these comments do not relate to the current application site. In short, the proposed development at the Beaver Centre is a small-scale infill development which will round off existing built industrial estate. The 2 units are designed to match the existing built form, with internal floor space provision being identical. Furthermore, the parking arrangements for each unit will be the same as that of the existing units, with 2 formal spaces and 1 informal space directly in front of each unit. As supported by the Highways Officer, this is compliant with the requirements contained within Northamptonshire's parking standards. The location and principle of development receives policy support from the local development plan due to its location within a strategic employment area. Furthermore, whilst it is of small scale, the development will create a number of jobs within a primary service village location. Clearly, we support the recommendation and respectfully ask the committee to grant planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Just remain seated. I'll ask the committee if got any questions. Any questions, Mr. Chamberlain? And Councillor Frost.
Thank you. As you probably gathered, the industrialisation of Woodford Hulse is causing some difficulties, in particular with the roads. And my question is, would you be amenable to, in these, how shall I put the words, to help ameliorate some of the negative impact of large articulated lorries and things like that on what were built to be residential roads, to contribute towards negating some of the impact of those through through resurfacing and so on. And could we make it a condition? That's another part of the question.
Do you want me to respond? As has been covered by the highways officer and within Oliver's report, the site is only for 2 small units on an existing industrial estate, accessed off another dedicated industrial estate road, and then onto Byfield Road without passing through residential streets or developments. And it wouldn't be articulated lorries that would typically deliver to these sorts of units. It would be more like long wheelbase vans, rigid lorries.
Thank you. Sean was coming to me.
Yes, through you, Chair, if I may. I know that the highway officer did conduct their site visit on the 3rd of November last year. Had that been an issue, had that been something they would have been switched on to, they would have probably asked for that as part of their conclusion, their actual response to the officer. They haven't, therefore we can't lawfully ask for it.
Chair, through you, thank you for giving me the time. You gathered that the people living in that area have a rather different view. Those roads have not been helped by what I call the industrialisation of Woodford House, and anyone that knows Woodford House at all will know that to be true.
Yes, Councillor Frost said about the industrialisation of Woodford Hall. Can you tell us, because you said 2 small units, how many people would you employ, and do you think it might be for local employment, or you don't intend to use local employment? I know it's outside of the remit of, but for us to see what impact it would be on the village, or if it would be a positive or a negative impact in terms of recruitment. Thank you.
Again, I can't really speak to will it be all of the points that you raised, but it's just 2 small units. I think off the top of my head they're 135 metres squared each. They're identical to what is already there. We're not extending further than the existing built form, only on that southern block, so it will literally be a mirrored development. Again, I couldn't speak to how many people would be employed by the end users, but it has been operating since I think the 90s or the 80s, so we are simply just filling in that last corner of an allocated and safeguarded employment site.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oliver, do you want to come back on anything that's been mentioned there?
No more comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, any further questions to Oliver on this application before I come to comments? Cecile.
Because they are small unit and they will, I hear what Councillor Frost, but I think I would like to propose that we go with officer advice. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Irving Swift is proposing we accept the officer's recommendation to approve the application. Do I have a seconder? Oh, Peter. Councillor Madden seconds that. All those in favour? And that's 9, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, 9 against and 1 against. So that application on 5B is approved. Okay. And you're going to leave now. Thank you. Okay, so we're just going to change over officers again for item 5C. Okay, so this is the land at Dodford Grange, Main Road, Dodford. So, over to you, Rob, when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. So this application relates to land at Dodford Grange, which is a bed and breakfast situated to the southern part of Dodford Village on the corner of Main Road. The site consists of a bed and breakfast, its access, parking area and curtilage within the western side of the bed and breakfast, which is currently maintained as garden space. So the application has been submitted as a revised scheme following an inspector's dismissal of a refusal of a previous larger scheme, and this application seeks consent to construct a single holiday let building with additional parking, utilising the existing access with the intention of housing business people, wedding guests and hosting events. Next slide, please. So this is the existing site access which will be utilised, and that's the bed and breakfast in the background. This is the parking area which is going to be extended, so there's going to be 8 additional spaces added should the development be approved. Next slide. So this is the site of the proposed building, just to the left hand side of the bed and breakfast which you saw previously. It is on the corner of Main Road, so it's sort of got the highway on 2 sides, but it is fairly well screened. Next slide, please. So they are the 2 boundaries facing Main Road. There is the odd patch in the hedgerow, however that will be reinforced by additional planting. Next slide, please. And again, that's over towards the B&B, that is outside the site. And the picture on the right hand side is the applicant's land to the north. That will not be developed as part of the application. Next slide, please. And these are views from Main Road. So you can see on the right hand side there is quite a substantial gap there, but that will be planted to offer additional screening. Next slide, please. So that is the footprint of the proposed building. Next slide, please. They're the cross sections, so you can see how the building would sit relative to the road. And these are the elevations. Yeah, next slide, please. So this is the aerial plan and committee plan. So there are flooding issues within Dodford, but not near the site. They are further north, as you can see. There is a sort of purple area towards the top there. And I think that's the last slide.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions to Rob? Catherine, Councillor Russell.
Thank you. On the border, on the boundary of the proposed build, there's that grey area. What is it?
I'm not sure where you mean.
It looks like cultivated fields, or
Yeah, correct. That is, yeah.
So that's farmland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions to Rob? Okay, we have a number of public speakers on this. We've actually got 5. So I'll call Simon Steele first, if you want to come and join the table. Again, when the green light's on, you've got your 3 minutes. The amber, you've got 30 seconds left. Then I'll ask you to stop when you get to the red. Just introduce yourself, say who you are, who you represent, and then your 3 minutes will start.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Simon Steele. I'm speaking on behalf of Kathy and Ian Farmer of number 1 The Green at the neighbouring property, and myself and Annabelle Steele of Dodford Manor.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm summarising some points made in my letter to committee dated 10th of January. We object to the proposal for the same concerns as raised by the neighbours and the parish meeting. This evening I respectfully draw the committee to 2 points I'd like to raise. One is underlying intended site use, we believe necessitating a change of use application, and secondly site pollution. Firstly, the intent for the site use and change of use requirement. The proposal, nearly 300 square metre new build, has been applied for as holiday lets. This does not correspond to the applicant's online marketing of the site nor its current operation as a B&B and hospitality venue. I quote from the website of Dodford Grange: celebrations and occasions, whether looking to celebrate an engagement, wedding, birthday or any other family group occasion, we can accommodate you in style and provide everything you need. We can offer exclusive use of our venue, both indoors and out. Furthermore, the site's intended use as a venue with accommodation has already been clearly outlined, as the applicant has concurrently obtained a premises licence, enabling late night refreshments, catering, late night service of alcohol, music, both indoors and out, for up to 36 guests. The planning application statement and supporting documents are inconsistent and not factually correct in a range of key areas including site use, visibility of the new build, as we've seen, car parking, refuse use and collection, and foul sewerage. The application does not reflect the intended marketed use or the current operation of the site. Indeed, it's arguable whether the current site's permissions are sufficient for its effective change of use to a B&B/hotel and hospitality venue. Based on Dodford Grange's site use and the underlying intent of the application, we believe an all-encompassing submission of an application for a change of use of the proposed site and current site from residential C3 to commercial C1 would be reasonable and consultative. In this way, the impacts of a hospitality venue with accommodation embedded in the residential area can be sufficiently understood and consulted upon by all. The second point I'd like to draw committee's attention to is pollution. There has been inadequate planning consideration of wastewater treatment of the current and the proposed site use. A total of up to 47 people may be on site at any one time or event. This produces significant effluent and requires commercial levels of wastewater treatment. Bearing in mind, the application states there is no stream or watercourse nearby. This indicates that all the effluent, once sufficiently treated, must be relieved into a soakaway system on the same site. This is already of concern locally, and effluent is flowing downhill into the village. I urge the committee to oppose this application and examine the merits of a change of use of application for the current and proposed site.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart. Spot on. Just remain seated while I ask questions. Any questions to Mr. Steele? Councillor Earnsworth.
Is it possible that on the plan you show where you live exactly?
I'm representing people that live just to the north of the blue, where to the north of the site, and I live beyond the lake that you can see to the top left-hand side of the page. But number 1 of the green is directly to the north of the property.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Colin Newton next. I'd like to address the committee, please, Mr. Newton. And again, just tell us who you are and who you represent.
Good evening. Yes, excuse me. My name is Colin Newton. I represent the parishioners of Dodford in my capacity as parish clerk.
Okay, and your 3 minutes will start now.
The residents of Dodford have repeatedly expressed their overwhelming opposition to this application for many reasons, the most significant of which are parking, noise and disturbance, disposal of effluents, and the classification and intended use of the new building. Firstly, parking. Historically, the existing parking arrangements at Dodford Grange have been shown to be woefully inadequate, with parking overspill occurring onto the adjacent narrow lane and grass verges, often during large events. The Local Highways Authority approval for the new access was conditioned upon the adequacy of the parking on the forecourt of Dodford Grange Bed and Breakfast. Previous experience suggests that this condition is clearly not being met, potentially causing obstruction to all traffic, especially emergency vehicles requiring access to Dodford Village. The applicants' proposals make no provision for the additional parking needs of their own vehicles, staff members' vehicles, nor do they provide any provision for visiting service providers' vehicles, such as hairdressers, beauticians, manicurists, wedding cars, taxis, etc. Our parishioners have expressed major concerns about the noise levels coming from the site. A recent incident involved a blatant breach of the conditions of the applicant's operating licence, with the playing of very loud amplified music late at night. When challenged on this point, the applicant's response was negative, to say the least. Currently, the outflow of the applicant's packaged sewage treatment plant discharges above ground into an open and poorly maintained ditch alongside the main road into Dodford Village. Dodford sits on a layer of impervious clay, therefore effluent is unable to be effectively absorbed into the ground and is known to re-emerge further down the hill, close to nearby residences. With no sampling data available, the composition of this effluent, and hence the adequacy of the applicant's treatment plant, is currently unknown. To conclude, while our parish is generally supportive of enterprise, the scale and inappropriate location of this particular application is, we contend, wholly unacceptable. In a more urban environment, this could reasonably be described as small-scale development. However, in this rural location, particularly with no connection to the mains drainage system, this constitutes a large-scale and intrusive proposal with serious environmental implications. In every sense, this proposal could be described as the right proposal but in the wrong place. Hence, in our view, the harm considerably exceeds any claimed benefit, and we would recommend that the application is dismissed.
Okay,
Thank you.
spot on again. So well done for that. Just remain seated while I ask the committee if there's any questions. Start with Councillor King first, and then we'll come along to Councillor Evans. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr Newton, for coming along. When you say the overspill of the car parking from events at the moment, how many roughly are we looking at?
Well, I did actually have a photograph I wanted to put forward, but I understand procedure, I couldn't do that. I believe from the photograph it would probably be reasonable to say there were about 8 cars involved. I should explain that the lane is very narrow at that point. And it
is on the picture. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes, you are speaking about the effluent that goes further down.
Yes.
Have you reported that, or has the parish reported that to the Environment Services? Because we have no evidence, and in the planning application that has been dealt with. So, how you are putting in front of us a fact that affluent goes further up, which must be very unpleasant. So what are the proof, and do you think that is not dealt with the planning applications? Thank you.
I think it's probably fair to say that the term effluent perhaps isn't exactly correct. It's most people's perception of that would be untreated. We're talking about effluent which has a degree of treatment, and I think I said in there that we don't know the extent of that purification through the septic tank system that's involved, biological digestion system basically, because we're not connected onto the mains drainage system. It either goes into a ground soak away, or in this instance it goes out externally beyond the boundary of the property into a ditch which runs along the edge of the highway and a public footpath.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Joyce.
Just like to know, I mean, I've looked at the report and it says there's actually no objections from the Environmental Health Department, so, you know, it clearly states that. So they've been out, they've had a look, they've assessed it, so just what I'd raised that, right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Smith, you're next, please. Again, just say who you are, who you represent. Sound like Cilla Black, don't you? Who are you? Where are you from?
Councillor David Smith, Ward Councillor for Woodford and Weedon. So, yep, and I think most of you know me anyway.
Okay, 3 minutes start now.
Perfect. So this site or this development is very similar to that was brought forward in 2020, which was put before planning committee and was refused despite it being put forward by officers for approval. It went to the planning inspectorate and the appeal was dismissed. Dodford is a small-scale village, and in planning, it's regarded as an other village, and therefore any development is expected to be small-scale to protect the form and character and setting of the village, and that was the reason. The effective character and appearance of the area was the reason that the planning inspectorate turned this down. It goes against a number of policies. It conflicts with policies R2, E7 of the West Northamptonshire Joint Core Strategy, the policies RA3 and RA6 of the Part 2 Local Plan and the National Planning, or the NPPF.
insofar as these policies require proposals to be of appropriate scale for the location and respect the environment, quality and character of the rural area. This scheme doesn't. This is not small scale. The building is equivalent to about 1.25 tennis courts. That's huge. For the avoidance of doubt, the presumption in favour of sustainable development, this does not meet it. Also, if you look at this is essentially, is it backland? I don't know. But the size of the building, in my opinion, you look at the plot that we look at now, it could easily be regarded as overdevelopment of the site as well. So I ask you to, if you're not sure at all, I ask you to refuse this one and let it once more to go before the planning inspectorate, which I believe they will draw the exact same conclusions as they did previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Main, any questions? Any questions for Councillor Smith? No? Oh, sorry. Councillor Madden.
Thank you. I believe you said this hasn't really changed from the application back in 2020, where officers have advised in the report that the applicant has taken into account all of the reasons for objection that were given by the inspectorate and have overcome or made adjustments so that they no longer contradict with anything that the inspectorate had said previously. Is that then not correct, please?
I don't believe so. And I believe that this were presented to the planning inspectorate again. I think they would come up with the same policy reasons for this not to happen. This is urbanising that area. You've got, if you like, development creep over the past 20 years. You can see in your planning papers this evening, going back to 2001. And this is, there's been nibble, and this is a big bite. This does have an effect on Dodford, and as has been said, Dodford is not on main sewage and it does flood, so that's another aspect, but I'm not discussing that aspect. I'm just purely looking at policy. We have to base our decisions on policy.
Do indeed. Lovely. Okay, any further questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Smith. So next one is Councillor Guildford. If you'd like to come and speak, please. Again, say who you are, who you represent, and then your 3 minutes will start.
Right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Chair, for permitting me to speak. My name is Jo Guildford. I'm here in support of the applicant. Yes, the application has been called in by Councillor Smith for the reasons he stated, and yes, it's true, there are policies it goes against. But, however, it's the classic case in front of you of benefit and gain. The Cabinet Member for Economic Development, Town Centre Regeneration Growth, Councillor Dan Lister, considers the principle of development should be supported as well. It's as a result of the small-scale tourism for the locality, which is in turn supported by WNC policy. In fact, only a couple of weeks ago, this council approved and published a new strategy to boost visitor economy and support local businesses to enhance tourism in Northamptonshire. I would like to quote from the document the following words: "We will work with employers to overcome barriers and realise opportunities for growth." The applicant has worked for a significant time with WNC, making significant amendments, and in answer to an earlier question, the bell tents have gone, the building has been moved, there has been substantial amendments made to address the concerns raised by WNC and the inspectorate. If we look at the statutory consultations, there's only been one objection received from the parish. Their objections raised have all been addressed within the body of the report, and the application is now not considered to be an appropriate scale for the location by the expert case officer. There is no concern about flooding, as quoted earlier, as it's in a low-risk area. Amendments to the access and parking have been made as per Highways recommendation. They've allowed for the additional parking. And to quote Councillor Irving Smith, there are no environmental health concerns. They are the experts in this field. To reiterate, there have been no statutory consultees object other than the parish meeting. If we now look at the public consultation in the report, out of a population of 203 or 102 households, there's only been 7 objections and there's been a letter of support received. I would therefore ask the committee to support the officer's recommendation to approve this application on the basis the proposal would form part of an existing established business and provide an opportunity for small-scale job creation and economic growth. The proposal is now of an appropriate scale and design and in keeping with the appearance and character of the current business activities and of no harm to the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just remain seated, Joe, and we'll see if there's any questions for you. Any questions? No, you got off lightly. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll call the last speaker on this, which is Roy Hammond. I'd like to come to the table and again, just say who you are, who you represent. Sure. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Councillors. I'm Roy Hammond, planning consultant. I speak on behalf of Mr and Mrs Jackson, the applicants. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. As always, we welcome the findings of the planning officer's report and obviously the recommendation for approval. We have worked hard over a considerable period of time to address the concerns of the inspector. The previous appeal has already been referred to, together with the concerns of the local community as far as possible and the case officer's thoughts as the new case officer for the application. In dismissing the last appeal relating to a much larger scheme, the inspector's main concerns were in respect to the scale of the previous proposal and the harm to the gap between what the inspector describes and what is the case, the 2 distinct parts of the settlement of Dodford, that the inspector did acknowledge benefits of the scheme, that they would be extensive and would attract considerable weight in the planning balance. In direct response to the inspector's concerns, fundamental changes have been made to the scheme to significantly reduce the scale and to overcome the harm to the concern, overcome the concerns about harm to the character and appearance of the area. And as already touched upon, those changes include omission of the bell tents, omission of the timber lodges, reduction in site area stroke coverage, and importantly, maintenance of the gap between the 2 parts of the settlement. During the course of this application, and in response to a fresh assessment by Rob, the proposal has been changed to use the existing Dodford Grange entrance and existing parking area with a formalisation of the spaces leading to increased parking. The principle of the proposed development is acceptable. It will bring economic benefits and strong synergy with nearby hospitality and function venues as recognised by the planning inspector, together with providing tourist accommodation to meet significant demand. In this context, support of the Council's Economic Growth Officer is welcomed. The proposal, by reason of the changes, would not result in adverse impact on the character appearance of the area. It would follow the existing pattern of development, and again it would maintain the gap between the 2 parts of the settlement. The proposal would safeguard residential amenity. Highway safety would be maintained, including through the provision of on-site parking. In summary, the concerns raised by the previous planning inspector at appeal have been satisfactorily addressed, as acknowledged by the planning officer. And the proposal, contrary to what previous speakers have said, in my opinion, as a planning consultant of 30 years, it is policy compliant. The proposed conditions of the recommendation for approval are supported, including those in respect of restricting the occupation of the building, ecological enhancements, the lighting scheme, and the foul and surface water drainage scheme.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Stop there. I'll see if there's any questions. Councillor Swift, you've got a question.
Yes, I live in a village, so I can see why some people might be a bit wary. Now, in the paper, I don't see any, if we have withdrawn all the permitted development right. So basically, because it was said it was the thinness of the wedge. So if the permitted development right will be withdrawn, that will maybe alleviate. So I just would like to hear from you if we will be minded to go with officer advice. If we could put things about, and I will have to see with the officer, the withdrawal.
Sorry, Councillor,
Yeah.
I think this is a question which needs to be put to the
the
case
officer.
officer, really, not to
No.
the speaker, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I went ahead.
Councillor Cribbin.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, part of what I'm going to say is something I'll put to the case officer as well, but it's in relation to, I know that one of the previous speakers mentioned about how you've got a premises licence for alcohol, etc., and it looks like this might be part of a bigger operation where things might be going on in the additional building. I know when the previous application came through Daventry Council at the time, there were concerns that we didn't sort of get a situation where you've got one building that can sell alcohol, serve alcohol beyond the time of what the premises licence was on the main site. Now, something I'll talk to the officers about in a bit later, but I'm just wondering whether that's going to be a potential problem, or whether we should be putting some conditions on about times.
We are the licensing committee though.
Yes,
Yeah, I know we're not.
That's a separate regime, so we can't.
I know, but
actually,
we can. I mean,
not in the planning.
we can
committee.
put timings on our conditions. We have done it in the
That
past.
timings are completely
Yeah.
separate to the licensing.
Yeah, I know they are. Yeah.
Regime.
That's right.
In terms of
But I was just wanting
operation
to
of
ask
the
the
use.
applicant whether that's a possibility that that site may be used as an overflow for the main place, and it might be a bigger venue. So I wanted to make sure we don't shoot ourselves in the foot as a planning committee by agreeing to something that we can then contradict other things.
Through you, Chair, if I can go back on that point, just to try and give a degree of comfort, Councillor Cribbin. On page 63, there's two conditions on there that relate to the actual limiting the use of the building. So it'll only be used for, obviously, residential accommodation and short-term letting. So if, hypothetically, were to be any other use, then it would be in direct breach of that. But that is a condition of, hopefully, comfort, where members minded to support the application, that they can take comfort from that wording.
Some papers that on page 53.
It's page 63.
Yeah. Now, I was aware of the time, of the amount of time you can actually spend on the site.
Chair, could I come back anyway? Is that okay?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So there's no. The premises licence stands separately, but I understood. I expected a question similar to that to come up, so I've spoken to my clients. There's no intention to change the premises licence at all, as I understand it, and I think we have to remember that what applied for tonight is separate from whatever happens at the house. And primarily it's a house. It's been described as a B&B, but it is a house. It's where my clients live. And yeah, so it's outside of the application site red line. And as a committee, you are only considering that element tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Russell.
Hello, good evening. If this venue was to have full occupancy without additional guests or visitors, but full occupancy within the property, how many people would be expected to be there?
So there's four bedrooms, 4 double bedrooms. So
That's
in
8.
theory, the maximum
Yeah.
occupancy is 8 people at any one time.
Okay. And no, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions to Mr. Campbell? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Rob, anything you want to come back on there that's been mentioned? It was why I asked the councillors if they've got questions.
Yeah, just, sorry, if you go back to the site plan.
Which one do you want? We're frozen at the moment. There we go.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not aware, the initial scheme, which was dismissed at appeal, sought to develop the land outlined in blue So the entire scope of that, so it has been reduced to just what you can see in the red line. And also the Highways Authority are happy with this. There may be existing parking issues, but the proposed building will be served by a sufficient amount of parking. So from a highway safety perspective, there are no concerns.
Okay, thank you. Any councillors got questions for Rob? So Councillor Irvine-Smith first, and then Councillor.
Yes, sorry if I ask the previous speaker, but can we have the permitted development right withdrawn, so whatever? Because one of the questions is it could be expanded or so on. So if we have, and I didn't see in the condition that the permitted development right were withdrawn, so could we have that? Would that be okay?
Sure, did you come in?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, through you. Just to Councillor Irvine-Swift, the permitted development rights for industrial or commercial type activities does differ from residential. And there's only certain things they can do, but a mass extension potentially could add different bedrooms onto it or new openings and so forth. That is rather limited by the very definition of the use of the actual activity. So it wouldn't attract those benefits as if this was doing a residential dwelling, for example. So, I mean, there would be no need to control it. So if they do want to extend it or alter it, they would need a separate consent in its own right. Hopefully that provides some degree of comfort.
No, I wasn't aware that commercial activities needed another regime. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Can we just clarify that all the items for refusal last time have now been all addressed?
Yes, as far as I believe, yeah. I mean, it's down to interpretation, obviously, the scale of what is proposed, but it has been significantly reduced, as the report explains. So I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Rob. I believe when we had some pictures up of cars, you said something about 8 additional car parking spaces, and somebody else said 4 additional car parking spaces. Which is it going to be, please, unless I've misunderstood?
Sure. So there are being 8 spaces provided. However, depending on the access and manoeuvrability within the site, you could argue some spaces would be lost in providing those additional 8 spaces. So 8 spaces are being provided. However, there may be 2, 3 that are lost in doing so in order to access those spaces, if that makes sense. So if you go back to the pictures of the parking, so where the car on the right is, for example, the grass to the area to the side of that is going to be turned into parking spaces, or some of it is. So obviously no one would be able to park where that car is now. But in total, there will be 8 spaces added.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Swift.
Well, coming back to the parking, because there is a comment about the things that come, the drainage and so on. Can we make sure that the parking has a proper drainage and it goes in and it's not completely the effluent with rain and so on goes on the road or somewhere else? Is that a condition on the parking, the way it's constructed, that is permeable? I think it's a law now, but I'm not sure. Is that a law?
Through you, Chair, I mean, the condition as it's worded for drainage, condition number 9, that could be tweaked to just accommodate for permeable surface for parking as well, a line or 2 lines included in that.
Could I add that the parking area is also considered and have permeability on the parking space? Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Russell.
I'm not quite sure when I should have raised this, or if I can raise it. Noise, music, after a certain time. If there's going to be weddings and birthday parties and various other celebratory style gatherings, is there somewhere where we can ensure that the noise is not allowed to continue after a certain time?
Sorry, through you, Chair, if I may. Sorry. That type of activity use would generally relate to the main activity on the site, not the tune that's been provided, because it's just the accommodation and a small breakout area and office area and refreshment area. That would be controlled by the licensing regime about the hours of operation for any activity or venue or how that was to be run. So it'd be a different regime, Councillor.
Councillor Smith, you've got a question?
Well, yes, we had that issue a long time ago in Daventry, and we put a on the planning condition. We restricted the hours for regarding the noise, and that was in a village not far away from Brixworth. So we did, on the planning permission, put hours, a condition on hours for noise.
And that relates to a previous application, which has no relation to this application whatsoever, so we can't put that on.
But Councillor Russell said that what happened, and I know that...
Would that be down to licensing to contain the hours of...
No, we can add a condition, because it was not exactly, but it was an Airbnb that was a bit transformed and so on. And we put a condition that no music system could be outside, or so that was a specific condition on the noise, no noise that, and I don't know how it worked because nobody complained since, and they have never used it. So I think we can put a condition on noise that is not. I don't know if
we'll find out.
Our officer.
Through you, Chairman.
Please, Amy.
If my memory serves me correctly, it related to a campsite, which was a completely different setup to this. And again, if my memory serves me correctly, officers did not recommend that condition. It was imposed by members. Yes. The advice to members is you can impose any conditions you want. You then have to justify them on planning grounds because the applicants do have a right of appeal should those conditions be challenged. And what we're saying tonight is that there are no justifications on planning grounds to impose such conditions on this particular development. That's not to say that other regulations will cover noise nuisance and noise pollution, etc. Under environmental health regulations, for example, and licensing. But we don't consider there to be planning justification for those conditions tonight.
Yeah, thank you. That was sort of the point that I was trying to make with Roy Hammond, is that previously we have done this, and I'm fully aware that licensing is a separate regime and it has its own rules and it does its own thing. But we do, I mean, there is a possibility of a planning committee putting on timings and noise and what they can and can't do, amplified music, etc., to avoid a situation. And I know we have an environmental health department as well that can enforce those. And quite often officers will say to us that regime is there to regulate that, and it does it. And a lot of the time it works, but obviously you have to wait for it to happen before you can get that happening. We have, as Councillor Owen Swift has said, we have in previous applications, we have put that on where there's been concerns from the public, and it hasn't been appealed. But that's what I was trying to ask the applicant sort of here is would they be amenable to that, and therefore we wouldn't get the appeal. So it alleviates some of the fears of the people. I hear what the parish is saying, that they're not happy with that.
I think what you're saying as well, but what position?
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, if I can, just to provide a little bit more clarity, hopefully. Sorry. Whilst I understand obviously what members' concerns are and discussions that have been held, it's somewhat difficult to potentially put a condition on of that nature when you've got the environmental health team that have actually officers come back and have admitted that, I quote, this application is for a B&B type accommodation. I do not see this as a noise concern. So that would effectively remove any kind of substantive rationale we would have to put a condition of that nature. Just food for thought.
Yes, please, Rob. Then Councillor Joyce.
Yeah, so noise is not necessarily an issue, but the applicant has said they're willing to agree to a condition stating no amplified music shall be played outside of the accommodation block, and that is condition 12 in the report.
It's parking. It's parking 12. I didn't see any.
I couldn't see it.
No. Why? I didn't see it. There's a light. Time limit.
Again, through you, Chairman,
Yeah.
just because an applicant wants a condition, it's not planning justification for imposing said condition. The government advice is quite clear. Conditions should only be imposed where there are clear planning justifications. You see in the report there's a clear advice from your environmental health officers to set out that there isn't a noise concern, and therefore we don't consider an hours restriction or indeed a noise restriction could be justified on planning grounds. As I say, that's not to say that other regulations, and the government advice is quite clear, you have to trust that other regulatory systems will be working efficiently. Should there be a noise complaint about, and similarly under licensing, that can be reviewed. What we're saying under this planning application, those conditions are not justifiable on planning grounds.
Okay, thank you, Eamon. Councillor Joyce.
Just looking at the plan, I'm assuming there will be additional new planting going into this plan. Yeah. What sort of what are we looking at? Is it trees, shrubbery? I don't know. Is it what sort of level of?
Rob can come back to that. They showed
Yeah.
a picture of
Yeah,
hedging.
just to see what it was going to be.
Do you know what sort of landscaping will be planted?
I can't read the text, but I believe it does say on the text what it's going to be.
I can't read it.
I would imagine it would be indigenous species, etc. Local problems, and again we can clarify that point with the applicant.
Okay. Are we there with the hedging? Are we okay with that? Yeah. Councillor Smith, question?
Yes, I think we are. We spoke about the noise, but also we have a think about the light. And I don't know, but for example, now in a lot of neighbourhood plan, you have the night sky, and it's very important for villages. So if we have the light, condition of the light on the planning application and the external light, if there is no light outside, we can somehow think also people will not play music if they are in the dark outside. So the light, we have the lighting, so the lighting condition should be maybe sufficient to alleviate all the concern of the things. And with that, I will go with recommendation.
Okay.
And I will propose that we agree with officer advice.
Hold on there just 1 minute. We'll see if there's any other comments on the application. Any comments on the application before we go to the proposal? Well, Councillor King.
Thanks, Chair. I'll make a comment then. So, as we've thoroughly discussed tonight, on planning grounds, we can't refuse. If we do, we're going to get taken to the inspectorate and then we're going to risk losing it. With regards to what's going to happen in the future, we can't determine that. There may be a change of use. If we want to put anything in there now, though, for the noise and the alcohol licensing, it's got to go through licensing. That's the correct way to do it. So, as it is, I'll be supporting it.
Any further comments? Councillor Flavel.
Well, Chairman, yes, I'm so sorry. Is it going to work, this one?
So I think they're all
Here you go.
need a bit of charge.
Well, I don't think any of them will work.
So that people that are online can hear as well.
Thank you. It's not very important anyway.
I'm sure it is.
No, it's not really. It's just I was going to completely agree with Anna said. do not know quite what we could refuse this on at the moment. I just cannot find anything that we could say, no, this is no good, which I think is what Anna was saying. And I would have to support it.
Okay. So we have a recommendation from the officers to approve the application. Councillor Irvine-Smith, do you want to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation? Do I have a seconder to propose the proposal? Councillor Joyce, all those in favour? And that's 9, I believe. So that is passed. So application 5C is approved. Okay, so we're just going to change over and allow people to leave. Okay, right, so we're on to the final item of the evening, which is the former site of the Vineyard Community Church, Warwick Street, Daventry. And Rebecca, this is yours to present to us.
Thank you, Chair. So this is for the erection of the retirement living apartments with associated access, car parking, landscaping and ancillary facilities. The application relates to a rectangular area of land on the edge of Daventry's town centre. To the north of the site is a public park and to the south is the town centre. The ground falls steeply south to north from Warwick Road to the public park. The site was previously occupied by a cluster of mechanical garages and has been vacant since 2010. If you can see on the site, the Daventry Conservation Area is just to the east, beyond the car park, to the east and to the southeast. I'll just run through some of the photos. So this is looking towards the park to the north on the left-hand side, and then the other one is just looking through the site, and you can see that there is a significant difference in levels there. And again, this is from Waterloo, and again you can just see the difference in levels and the existing complex in the distance. This is up on Warwick Street and just shows the beginning of the conservation area and going into the town centre. And again, this is on the opposite side of Belmont Road where we were just looking, and it shows, again, the site itself, the frontage onto Warwick Street, and then the accommodation complex. So the proposals for the retirement living scheme, comprising 47 apartments, 26 one-bed and 21 two-bed. Access to the site is from the existing access on Belmont Road. A total of 25 parking spaces are provided. An area of amenity spaces provided within the development, as well as the ground floor units having patios and some of the upper floors having balconies. The site's allocated in the local plan for redevelopment of a wider site. The proposal is one element of this allocation. Whilst no master plan has been submitted in accordance with the policy, given that the location and its isolated location adjacent to the town centre, it's not considered that this will prejudice the remainder of the site coming forward. If I just run through a couple of the issues and I'll go through the elevations. So the local highway authority did originally object to the application due to the proposal failing to meet minimum parking provisions. The agents has referred to very similar developments within the district, comparable in size and location, where the local highway authority have had similar parking standards. The parking standards do allow for a relaxation of the minimum requirements in exceptional circumstances. The local highway authority agree that the location of the development adjacent to the town centre weighs in favour of there being less reliance on car ownership and journeys. And for this reason, the local highway authority have removed their objection. They did, however, recommend that a parking beat survey be carried out to access parking availability within the surrounding area. The agents have agreed the scope of this with the local highway authority. The survey has now been carried out, and the local highway authority have confirmed that the results of the survey suggest that there is parking capacity within the immediate area, both during the night time and daytime. The local highway authority have confirmed that this exercise was useful to provide first-hand evidence rather than anecdotal evidence. So, as I've mentioned, that the site is adjacent to the conservation area, and our conservation officer has raised no objection, but did raise some concerns originally with the scale and massing of the proposed building. We have negotiated with the agent in relation to this. However, due to issues of viability, the applicants are unable to reduce the number of apartments proposed. And if we just run through some of the elevations, so we've got the elevations fronting on to Warwick Street and then the side as well. There we go, got to the rear and the side. And this is just a visualisation on the corner of Warwick Street and Waterloo. Another on Waterloo, which just shows the scale of it. And we've also got some plans to show the existing street scene and the proposed. So that should be, here we go. So this is on the existing on the left, and then you can see the proposed building has been superimposed to show how it will fit in with the street scene. Sorry. Can you, that's right, yes. Sorry.
No. Yeah.
Do you want me to have a look?
Left is C4.
And then it's here. Building's on the corner there. I see. Yeah. Sorry, I was a bit. Yes. We've got a couple more to show you as well. So this is looking along Tavern Lane. So on the left-hand side, you can see the existing residential accommodation, and then on the right-hand side, you can see the corner of the building where it will go. And then this is one more. So this is on Warwick Street, the other end of kind of the town centre. So you can see again, it's that corner opposite. Well, it's adjacent to the town centre. So, given these photo montages that have been put together, officers have taken the view that the building has a number of design features to minimise the visual impact and break up the scale of the massing, and consider that it wouldn't harm the appearance and setting of the conservation area. It would reinstate the roadside built form within the site, helping to restore a semblance of the enclosed street scale which was historically on the site. On balance, officers consider that there's no overriding heritage constraints that have been identified, and therefore the proposal is in accordance with relevant policies. In relation to ecology, it's noted in the report that the site will not provide a net gain in biodiversity. However, this does need to be weighed against the redevelopment of this brownfield site, and it is an allocated site within the local plan. It's in a sustainable location, and it's providing specialist housing. Conditions are proposed to ensure that a landscape and ecology management plan be submitted, which would detail on-site compensation and enhancement details. Finally, just picked up in the report that there's a financial viability appraisal supports the application. This has been reviewed by an independent viability advisor on behalf of the local authority. The review confirms that the scheme is unviable in relation to policy compliance scheme, and therefore is unable to provide any financial contributions. Following further negotiations and interrogation of that, officers have found the findings of the report acceptable. Taking all the issues into account and those set out in the report, on balance, officers recommend that the application is approved. Just draw members' attention to, it's not later, it's a verbal update actually. We've had further discussions with the LLFA, and the applicants have taken place since the drafting of the report. Further information has now been submitted, and the LLFA have confirmed that the details are acceptable to address their concerns in relation to surface water. So it's been recommended that condition 16 in relation to surface water is removed, and 3 additional conditions are imposed. So the first one relates to a surface water drainage scheme in accordance with what's been submitted to us so far. The second is for a detailed scheme for the maintenance an upkeep of the drainage scheme, and thirdly, a verification report so that it's all been installed correctly and as approved.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions to Rebecca? Councillor Smith.
So it's my understanding you are going to add 3 conditions at the end. What you said you had. So we haven't seen them and they seem quite, so we will have to delegate to officers because those conditions will be put at the end of the report and we have not seen them at all. So it would be wise, or I would ask Teresa to give us, so that we delegate those extra conditions because they are not on the update.
Yeah,
it's
totally agree, Councillor,
Yeah.
that in these circumstances we need to give delegated authority to the
officer.
planning manager in consultation with the chair to agree the actual wording of those conditions. But as long as you're all happy that you've understood the general sense of what they're seeking to achieve.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Lovely. Councillor Flavel.
Yes, could I just ask, please, Rebecca, the Conservation and Heritage, they made no objection, but they did suggest a slight revisal to the design. Has that been done? You may have been saying it while I was reading this, but...
Through you, Chair. We have tried to make some to suggest some amendments, but due to viability issues, the scheme is viable with 47 units. So any other amendments would result in a reduction in those units, which the scheme will not be able to justify.
It wasn't just the height then?
Well, what has happened as a result of consultation is that the massing has been broken down. So it's not one. Well, it is a continuous building, but there's different elements to break up the massing.
Because of the level. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and the levels has been a real issue in this one as well.
Yes. Okay. I just wondered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell.
Thank you. 2 things. It says the proposed design will use mechanical ventilation with heat recovery for all habitable rooms. What sort of noise control is on this? Is it obvious from outside the building that there is this mechanical ventilation system?
Thank you, Chair. As far as I understand, no. It will be as a standard window from the outside. I don't think there'll be any external difference.
And secondly, it said the site was previously a garage site. So does that mean that some of the ground will have to be? Is any of the ground degraded with that sort of material? You know, oil, petrol, that sort of thing. Will it have to go through a special process to make it more amenable for building?
Thank you, Chair. Environmental Health have been consulted. They haven't raised any significant any objection with the scheme. We've got condition 17, which relates to contaminated land, so they will need to submit details to us. And if it's the standard conditions, really, that details need to be submitted. It's implemented in accordance with, if necessary, a remediation scheme, and then there's also reporting any unexpected contamination.
Okay, we have Councillor Cribbin, and then we'll move to the speakers.
Thank you. I think just to lay some of the fears of Councillor Russell, I mean, from my recollection, this was a car showroom. I don't think it had any petrol pumps or anything like that on it, or was a car. I don't know whether they had a workshop attached to it or not. Did they? Yeah, so there might be some contamination, but I don't think there's any petrol pumps there, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, we've got 2 public speakers on this. We've got Stephen Dabbs and Rachel Clare. So I'll call on Stephen Dabbs first. I'd like to join the table, say who you are, who you represent, and then your 3 minutes will start.
Right, hopefully the microphone will work. I'm Stephen Dabbs. I'm a councillor on Daventry Town Council, and it is that council that I'm representing tonight. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. The Town Council is supportive of redeveloping this site. Unfortunately, as with many proposals, we object to this particular proposal. Principally, there are too many flats in the development. The density is too high, we consider it to be an overdevelopment of the site. Following on very closely with this is the parking issue. You'll note there's only roughly half the parking spaces for the residents, 25 spaces for residents, staff and visitors. It's going to cause overspill into the surrounds. I think you can see it on some of the photographs, particularly Belmont Road and outside on Warwick Road, outside a former pub, the Coach and Horses, which is now new flats. There are very often cars parked along that road and quite often within the vicinity to the zebra crossing, so not aiding safety for the pedestrians crossing or the traffic. If you've seen the design and access statement pictures, it shows Belmont Road is parked up most of the time. Where are these cars going to go during the development and afterwards? I don't really accept the principle that only half of the residents will have cars when you consider this is aimed at wealthier residents, because there's no social housing. I can't believe that they won't have cars. The proximity of the development to the town centre, yes, it's close to the High Street, but the High Street is not a very active centre anymore. Bowen Square is the main shopping area, and that's a good 8-minute walk or 300 metres or so away. Is that realistic that people won't need any extra transport? I note the mention of the parking survey, and there are car parks around, but the Aldi car park is usually packed during the day. There's a car park down the hill, and that's usually pretty busy as well. I don't think adding an extra requirement is going to help the parking at all. On the final points, I note that we don't have anything on renewable energy or electric vehicles, and yet we're going to or the office would recommend approval and then to put a condition in. I'd rather have this at the outset of the plan. But having said that, I think that's a good list of all the reasons that we object on the council, the town council, for this development, and therefore I'd request that members would actually reject this application this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Mr. Dabbs, just stay there. See if anybody on the committee has got any questions for you. Councillor Joyce.
You mentioned about the parking. Is it on an actual bus route at all? Where the building will be? Is there any active bus routes?
As far as I'm aware, yes, there are buses that go to
got regular bus routes,
and they would go to the bus station and elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Any further questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
And we'll call on Rachel Clare next, who's going to come and join us. Again, just say who you are, who you represent, and then your 3 minutes will start.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Clare. I'm the planning agent for the application and speaking in support on behalf of the applicant, which is McCarthy Stone.
Okay, thank you very much. 3 minutes will start.
Thank you. So firstly, in terms of the principle of development, as mentioned, the site is allocated within the Daventry local plan as part of site EC3, which covers land to the north and west of Daventry town centre for a mix of uses, which includes residential development. Given the site's exceptionally sustainable location on the doorstep of Daventry town centre, the development of the site for specialist older persons housing is a highly logical use for the site. So the principle of development on the site is acceptable and in accordance with the development plan. There's a significant and growing need for specialist retirement dwellings within West Northamptonshire, with the population of people aged 65 and over having increased by 30% in 10 years from the latest census data, and these figures are forecasted to continue to grow into the future. The need for more specialist housing is identified within the development plan, and these proposals will help to meet this need. In terms of the proposals for the site specifically, the applicant has undertaken significant engagement with officers throughout the application, and as a result of this extensive work, there are no technical consultee objections to the proposals, including from highways, drainage, heritage, environmental health and landscape officers. And then just moving on to the benefit to the proposals, key ones to note are the delivery of 47 specialist older persons homes to meet a significant and growing need within Daventry and West Northamptonshire. This in turn benefits the wider housing market as people downsize and free up starter and family-sized homes within the area. The development will reuse and revitalise a vacant brownfield site within the town centre. The site is in a highly sustainable location, reducing residents' reliance on private vehicles. The scheme is of a high-quality design that embraces the local architectural style of Daventry and responds both sympathetically and appropriately to the adjacent conservation area and the site's prominent corner position. The scheme also achieves a high standard of sustainability credentials, which includes a highly efficient building fabric, air source heat pumps, solar panels, 100% electric heating, so there are no gas boilers, mechanical heat recovery and EV charging will be provided to all the car parking spaces. So to summarise that all, the proposals will include a high quality and sustainable design, helping to contribute towards a significant and growing need of housing for the elderly in a highly sustainable location, whilst reusing a brownfield site that's laid vacant for many years. There are no technical consultee objections, so I respectfully urge you to follow your officer's recommendation to approve the application.
Okay, thank you very much. All the hands are going up. Just say there, I've got to see if there's any questions. Councillor Hill, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Chair. Daventry Town Council mentioned that in theory they're not necessarily against the principle of the design, but more about the kind of density. Am I correct in assuming there's no wiggle room on the viability regarding the number of apartments that you put in there?
Yeah, no, so obviously the proposals are for 47 dwellings. I think as kind of referenced, it's an extremely challenging site to develop, so the change in levels on the site is 7 metres. If you know the site, it's a very small site for that amount of level changes. Obviously it is a brownfield site, so there are remediation works to be done in the ground. And obviously it's specialist accommodation, so there's a lot of kind of additional costs that come with that type of development, you know, in terms of sort of optional extra accessibility, adaptability standards that are over and above policy requirements, you know, ward and kind of call systems, things like that, that are more expensive than standard housing, and that's kind of something that isn't necessarily taken into account when affordable housing thresholds are set and viability thresholds are set by development plans. Those kind of specialist items as such aren't accounted for, so that is why kind of the units are where they are, to obviously deliver this site and bring it forward.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Smith. Question?
Yes, you say that you have taken into account the architecture of Daventry Town. Can you explain to me, because I have problem to see that it looks very much like any of McCartney and Stone building with a balcony outside. It doesn't, I mean, I don't dislike it, but because I am French, I have a great aid of segregating old people and young people if they don't have a condition that means that they need to be segregated. So I know it's retirement buildings, and I cannot see anything that relate to Daventry, and we know Daventry quite well because I was a Daventry district councillor. So can you explain to me what is you think you have done to relate to the Daventry vernacular of the building, please?
So kind of as those pictures are flicked across, what you'll see is those are taken from the conservation area, and kind of those key things you'll note is the use of a red brick render, which is obviously where the material choices come from for the scheme, so they're to reflect locally contextual materials. Also the chimneys on the building, obviously that's quite reflective of the conservation area, so that's kind of additional details that have sought to reflect those details. And then in terms of obviously the corner, how you've got the corner element to give that kind of presence. So they're the kind of key features really. So it's about kind of using those traditional materials that are seen in Daventry. And in terms of the render, that's kind of a colour that's come out of the conservation area appraisal, in terms of that being quite a prominent colour and material used within the conservation area. So that's been obviously matched to what the conservation area appraisal has picked up.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Russell and then Councillor Madden.
Hello. I don't know. Maybe it's just working. I don't know. Thank you for your very precise and concise presentation. It's more just reassurance that I'm looking for here. My 90-odd-year-old mum used to live on the second floor of a building and the lift was out of order frequently. So I'm hoping that in this case there will be works done to ensure that people aren't stranded, vulnerable older people aren't stranded on the third floor in the event of some sort of catastrophe.
Yeah, so there is obviously a lift in the building to ensure accessibility. I think quite an important thing to note is that McCarthy Stone, not only do they build their developments, but they manage them in perpetuity. So it doesn't go over to, a management company that's got no interest in the people that live there. So, obviously it's McCarthy Stone, it's their customers that are going to be living in this building that they'll be managing. So it's obviously a top priority for them that the building's always in working order to make sure that people living in their buildings are obviously happy and can get around safely.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Madden?
Thank you. I'm sorry if I've missed it. One of the objections from Daventry Town Council was you said solar panels, heat recovery systems, EV charging for every car parking space. That was one of their objections. So I'm just seeking reassurance that that is in fact the case. Every car parking space is going to have EV charging and that there are going to be solar panels on the building and heat recovery systems inside.
Yeah, so obviously in terms of the EV charging, it's covered by building regulations in any event, so that's a requirement for one to every space. And yeah, all of the sustainability measures were incorporated in the energy and sustainability statement that was supported with the application, and that obviously details all of those measures which will be part of the scheme. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything you want to come back on there, Rebecca? Are any of those questions and answers? No? Okay. Any further questions to the officer? Any comments? Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very well thought out application, actually. Listening to what the applicant was just telling us, I think they've really kind of like gone to town on it and really looked at every possible facet of it. It doesn't sound like it's a particularly easy site to develop either, so I think it's equally impressive that they've managed to get something viable in there. So personally, I'm very happy to support it.
Okay. Any further comments? Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the curb appeal of it is really pleasing, actually, and I like the design. I work in housing, did 5 years of retirement living, and projects like this are absolutely essential for older people. So I fully support it.
Any other further comments? Councillor Madden?
I feel I should, as this is my ward, Daventry East, and I too very much like the proposal. I think it's very attractive. I have an 86-year-old dad who very soon is going to have to give up driving because of eyesight and just age. And if he was put in somewhere like this, freeing up his house for other people, it's just at the end of the town centre road. It's the proverbial stone's throw away from where I live. I know the site very well. I've always anticipated it being used for something of this nature, and I very much like it and will be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the officer's recommendation is for approval. Councillor, I'm seeing that you're proposing we accept the officer's recommendation for approval. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Madden seconding it. All those in favour? And it looks like it's going to be unanimous. That's 9-4. Okay, thank you very much. So that's approved. 5D is approved. That brings us to item 6. There is no urgent business. So thank you very much for your attendance.
I'd like to say there is urgent business, actually.
Thanks once again, Sean.
Is it possible to put a table there that doesn't creak every time somebody moves? It's very distracting and it's really, quite difficult.
Oh, we'll try. We'll try.